All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Session 4, AFSOC Heritage. Again, my name is Jim Gilday. Here we're going to look at Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, 1990-1991, followed by Operation Enduring Freedom, 2001, Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2003. We're going to look at Cannon Air Force Base briefly, and follow that by humanitarian assistance missions. All right, Operation Desert Shield. 2 August 1990, former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein invaded the tiny country of Kuwait, threatened the security of Saudi Arabia in the entire region. In response, U.S. and coalition forces executed Operation Desert Shield, the buildup of forces in Saudi Arabia. Most of AFSOC's personnel and resources found themselves at King Fahd International Airport in Saudi Arabia, as well as other strategic classified locations, such as RR, that's ARAR, Saudi Arabia, in preparation for what would become Operation Desert Storm. On the 17th of January 1991, 4 of AFSOC's MH-53 Pavlo helicopters, with their sophisticated ground terrain following radar, their advanced satellite GPS, led 8 Army Apache attack helicopters with their inferior systems against the featureless desert across the border from Saudi Arabia into Iraq, flying low beneath radar, flying fast and deep until they reached their objective, an Iraqi radar and communication site. Once they reached the objective, Pavlos backed off to an overwatch hover position. The Apaches came in, locked onto their targets, and simultaneously unleashed their deadly arsenal. They obliterated the Iraqi communication and radar site. Once they were finished scorching the earth, Pavlos assumed the forward position, the Apaches took up the rear, and they followed them back to Saudi Arabia. Now, the way the Iraqis set up their system was like a picket fence. What those Apaches did, they took out one of the pickets, created a 10-kilometer wide area of undetectable airspace that led directly to Baghdad. As they were heading back to Saudi Arabia, overhead, they heard hundreds of fighters and bombers heading in that direction. That was the outset of Desert Storm. Again, the Pavlos showed the Apaches the door into Iraq, and the Apaches blew that door open. Okay, some of you may have heard of Spirit 03. For those of you who haven't, I will tell you a story of heroism that defines Spirit 03. I'll refer to as Spirit 03. 31 January 1991, during Operation Desert Storm, AC-130 Spectre gunship, call sign Spirit 03, was part of a 3-gunship formation supporting ground forces as an Iraqi 3rd Armored Division, 5th Mechanized Division, crossed the border into Saudi Arabia from Kuwait, heading towards the small town of Khafji. Now, the civilians were pretty much evacuated from Khafji. It was strong pointed by Marines, but they would be no match for 2 advancing divisions. Spirit 01, Spirit 02, and Spirit 03 methodically and systematically annihilated those 2 divisions. Now, at the time, gunships rarely, if ever, flew during the day. They would leave their base at night, execute the mission, get back before daybreak. As I said, the 3 gunships obliterated those 2 divisions. Spirit 01 and Spirit 02 called off station, heading back to their base. Spirit 03 was about to call off station when they got an urgent distress call from a ground force that was taking overwhelming fire from an Iraqi missile battery. Spirit 03 assured the ground force they were there, they weren't going anywhere, they would locate and destroy that battery. And they did. They found it, they pummeled it, they reduced it to molten metal. Other targets of opportunity presented themselves. Spirit 03 engaged those targets, and they engaged those targets. And then Spirit 03 had a problem. They lost their cover of darkness. They were a slow-moving, vulnerable target silhouetted against the rising sun, probably much like this photo, as an SA-16 man-portable surface-to-air missile screamed from the earth and found its target underneath the wing of Spirit 03. Sent the aircraft into an uncontrollable violent spin, prevented the aircrew from bailing out. The last radio transmission was 0635 hours. It was a frantic, garbled Mayday, Mayday, as Spirit 03 and 14 Hurlburt Air Commandos plunged into the Persian Gulf. It was the single greatest loss of an Air Force unit during the First Gulf War, brought Hurlburt and the entire AFSOC community to its knees. But in true AFSOC fashion, we picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves off, supported the families, and celebrated the heroism, posthumously awarding each of the 14 the Air Force's third highest award for valor, the Silver Star Medal. 26 days after the terrorist attacks against the United States, AFSOC had boots on the ground in Afghanistan. This is Tech Sergeant Bart Decker, combat controller, attached to an Army Special Forces team known as an Operational Detachment Alpha 555 or ODA Triple Nickel, working with General Dostrom's Northern Alliance fighters on horseback. Now the plan called to infiltrate, liberate Mazar-i-Sharif, Kandahar, and Bagram. First two fell into coalition hands. Bagram was the last. If anybody's been to Bagram, the Air Force cantonment area has an old Russian air traffic control tower. It's got walls about 2 feet thick. Tech Sergeant Calvin Markham was the combat controller, recently retired Chief Markham, Silver Star recipient, and his special forces infiltrated into Bagram, made their way to that control tower to the top, and began prosecuting targets across the flight line. That is when we assumed responsibility for Bagram Airfield. Okay, who recognizes the gentleman on your left? If you said Prince Harry, you are correct. The gentleman on the right, Tech Sergeant Chris Fallure, is a Joint Terminal Attack Control qualified combat controller. They were working in adjoining battle spaces in Afghanistan. Again, the Prince is a forward air controller, but he only had rotary wing aircraft at his disposal. He wasn't too adept at controlling rotary wing aircraft. Sergeant Fallure is an expert at controlling all airframes. He lent the Prince some assistance. This was after the fact. Again, this photo was classified for a while until the press revealed his location, and then he had to be whisked back to England. The Prince, that is, not Sergeant Fallure. Okay. All right, today we find ourselves under Operation Freedom Sentinel. Again, these are combat controllers at Forrester Field in Afghanistan, named after Senior Airman Mark Forrester, combat controller, who was killed in 2010. Okay, I know you've seen this photo, Operation Neptune Spear. 2 May 2011, that is the day we delivered justice to the doorstep of Osama bin Laden. I show this because the blue suitor, the Air Commando sitting in the president's chair, at the time was Brigadier General Brad Webb. He was the former director of AFSOC operations. Most recently, Lieutenant General Brad Webb, our AFSOC commander, who now leads Air Education and Training Command. And then you got Hillary there smoking her cigarette. I'm kidding, it's just a pen. Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2003. Again, AFSOC at the tip. This time, MC-130s infilled hundreds of special forces in northern Iraq to prop up the Kurds prior to executing Operation Iraqi Freedom. Today, we are under Operation Inherent Resolve, the fight against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. 1 October 2007, AFSOC extended its reach out west when we assumed host responsibility for Cannon Air Force Base. There's Colonel Tim Leahy accepting command of the newly activated 27th Special Operations Wing at Cannon with their dynamic mission out there involving the MQ-9 Reapers. Okay, so you guys are good at blowing things up. You're good at getting operators on and off the X, killing bad guys. But you're also good at helping during humanitarian assistance missions. These are just 3 instances. I could probably have 5 slides on AFSOC's involvement with humanitarian assistance. Let's look at Operation Tomodachi. This was the earthquake tsunami in Japan in 2011. Pararescuemen searching through debris for survivors. Hurricane Michael, the powerful Category 5 hurricane that decimated Mexico Beach, Florida in 2018, inflicted catastrophic damage at Tyndall Air Force Base. As soon as the winds died down, the first SAO Air Commandos, CV-22s, landed at Tyndall Air Force Base and lent assistance. The Tom Luong Cave Rescue. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Thai Cave Rescue. I recently added this one because this is a dramatic instance of a humanitarian assistance mission involving air commandos that really captured the international community's attention. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on the Thai Cave Rescue for those of you that may not be familiar with it. 23 June 2018, 12 young boys from the Thai youth soccer team, known as the Wild Boars, along with their assistant coach, set off for an afternoon adventure one day after practice to the Tom Luong Cave. Now they intended to go in for an expedition of about an hour, reach an area known as the Underwater City, and then come back out. Little did they know, shortly after they entered the cave, the sky opened up with monsoon rain. Drenched and already saturated mountain caused a raging river of water to begin to fill the chambers in the cave. When it came time for the boys to head back, not only did they realize their passageway out was blocked by the raging river, but it was also rising, forcing them deeper into the cave, till they reached an elevated plateau, measured approximately 11 feet by 16 feet wide, safe from the rising water, but now they were trapped, nearly 1.5 miles deep into the cave, 2.5 miles down from the surface. When it got dark, a park ranger noticed their bicycles at the cave entrance, made the grim realization that there were children trapped inside. The highest echelon of the Thai government set out an international plea for assistance, specifically to the U.S. Embassy. Pacific Command and AFSOC responded, tasking the 353rd Special Operations Group from Kadena Air Base, Japan, to deploy to Chiang Rai and lend assistance. The team was led by these two gentlemen pictured, Major Charlie Hodges, Special Tactics Officer, Master Sergeant Derek Anderson, Pararescueman, and a team of about 30 air commandos deployed to Chiang Rai. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my personal opinion, had it not been for those two gentlemen and their team, there would have been 13 dead bodies in that cave, since one of the COAs, or the courses of action the Thai officials were seriously considering, was leaving the boys in the cave for 4 months until the monsoon rain and the flood waters receded. They wanted to walk them out with zero risk, which was not an option. Eventually, expert cave divers started to descend on Chiang Rai. Two from Britain, Mr. Stanton and Mr. Volithan, actually located the boys in Chamber 9 because up until that point, we didn't know where they were. They recorded it on their GoPro, came out and briefed the teams that diving them out would be impossible. Much of the route was underwater, under a raging river of black water. Some areas only involved a 3-foot wide area to scoot through. Sharp stalactites hung from the ceiling. This cave tested every ounce of their skill and courage. Unfortunately, all the other COAs were eliminated, such as alternate entrances, exits. Drilling was an impossibility. The only way to get them out was to dive them out. Sergeant Anderson developed a dive plan. 270 oxygen tanks would be pre-staged through chambers 3 through 8 in the cave. Each boy would need his own personal expert cave diver. The two British cave divers agreed to organize a team under one condition: the boys would need to be unconscious. Again, fortunately, two cave divers from Australia, Dr. Harris was an anesthesiologist, and Dr. Challen was a veterinarian. Together, they developed a drug cocktail. 30 minutes prior to the dive, the boys would be given Xanax to relax them. They would be fitted in a wetsuit. Then they would be injected with atropine, would dry up their mucous membrane, prevent them from choking on their saliva. And finally, they were given the powerful drug ketamine, would render them into an almost comatose-like state. It would paralyze them where they could not feel pain. They were fitted with a full facial scuba mask, one that delivered a continuous supply of oxygen versus a standard mask that supplied oxygen on demand. Their hands were zip-tied behind their back, and their legs were zip-tied together as well. An oxygen tank was bungee corded around their chest, and they were handed off to the expert cave diver. Now, ketamine wears off, so the cave divers had to carry extra syringes to ensure that the boys did not wake up during that 8 to 10 hour journey out of the cave. Now, on instructions from Dr. Harris, if it came down to giving too much ketamine or too little, they were to give too much. There was a slim to zero chance of an overdose. They could take no chance that the boys would wake up during that 8 to 10 hour journey. And of course, we all know the happy ending. After 18 days, all the boys were safely extracted from the cave and returned to their families. Again, not due in no large part to the behind-the-scenes command, control, and coordination of the Air Commandos. All right, so this was our journey again. Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, made our way through the years and looked at some of the humanitarian assistance operations that AFSOC was involved in. Again, any questions, please email james.gilday@us.af.mil. Thank you.